Page 21, Saint Anthony Chorale. Page 20, they're introducing you to the key of G major. I'd like to go over that briefly with you. G major has one sharp, an F sharp. So on the piano, it's going to use all the white keys like C major did, except the F. It's going to be an F sharp. And that's the G major scale. I encourage you at this point to go do my scale video on G major and learn it at least the one octave, the beginner level. If you don't know the G major scale at all, do one octave. Learn the scale and the fingering to it and be able to play it one octave, both hands together. If you already know the scale, then go ahead and do it 2 octaves, the intermediate level. 2 octaves up and down. They show that over here on number 3 on page 20. I prefer to concentrate on the keyboard when I'm doing scales, so I get out of the music. But you want to read the music, you go right ahead. On page 20, they're showing you the G position, where it's 5 notes, 5 fingers to 5 notes, and the bottom note in each hand is a G. G position. Okay. The primary chords, number 2, and please learn these. These are important. The 1 chord, the 4 chord, 5/7 chord, and 1. Learn them. They'll help you out a great deal if you'll take the time. You will learn them over time, but the sooner you learn them, the better. And then number 4 at the bottom, they talk about the chord inversions. Remember, we can take a chord and we can invert it or turn it over. We'll put the bottom note on. We'll keep turning. That's what that's about. They're talking dominant 7th, which is the 5/7 chord. Remember, in the primary chords, one of the primary chords is a 5/7 chord, also known as a dominant 7th chord. In the key of G major, the 5/7 chord starts on the 5th step, and it's here, 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 and here. That's the whole chord. It's 4 notes. We don't have to use all 4 notes. We generally leave one or note or other out. But if I take this and start turning it over, you get its inversions, and that's what they're showing there. That's, all that ugly stuff there is just the... Yeah. I know those chords look ugly, but they're not. Once you understand what the chord is, you just kind of glance at it and say, oh, I know that chord, and you got it. Takes a little time, but you'll get it eventually. I know you will. I don't know how important it is to show you all the 4 and 5 at the bottom of the page at this point, but Bastien seems to think it's important, so okay, there you are. As far as Saint Anthony Chorale goes, it's in the key of G major, of course, because you'll see in the key signature at the beginning it's got 1 sharp, an F sharp, so all F's are sharp. In the right hand, we got this dotted rhythm again. Hopefully you can get dotted rhythm. You got a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And it's common time, so 4/4 time. So at the beginning, 1 and 2 and. The 8th note comes on the and of 2. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And that's the dotted rhythm. Dotted rhythm again on the 2nd line on the each of the endings there. It's the first one, it's here. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and in the 2nd ending, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Fingering wise, you're starting in G position. You may not stay there, but you're starting there. But if you look at the 2nd line and the 2nd ending there, where do you know about 1st or 2nd endings? I'll talk about that in a minute, but go over to where it's the 3rd measure over on the 2nd line. You have that started, the dotted rhythm we talked about, and then you cross over the thumb to get the F sharp. Just move it over a little bit. Again, this move is important in piano. You need to be able to do it, so don't make a big deal out of it. Don't go twisting around and all kinds of junk. Just relax. Let the thumb just move over a little bit. And then once you're there, stay there. You just changed hand positions. Now we're in this position. That's an E position. because the next note on that half note is with fourth finger, and you end with third finger. I'll come back to the endings in a minute. Left hand just has, on the first line, is just the primary chords. One chord, next measure is 4 chord, 1 chord, 5/7 chord, 1 chord, everybody's happy, that's all that is. Then the second line, now the left hand gets to play just single notes. And whenever you're playing single notes in the hands like this, it can get tricky because they're not necessarily together. The fingers, if I use an index finger in one hand, I might have to use a little finger in the other or whatever. You have to work it out. It's another reason to work it out one hand at a time first. When you can get that, then you put the hands together and then the whole adventure starts all over. So on the second line there at the beginning, we're here. And notice that they want a third finger in the left hand on that middle C. You've been in G position. Well, that puts second finger on the C, so now you got to come up one key and put third finger on it. Try and get where you can do that without looking at the keyboard, to be able to go up and down at least one key, and you know what that feels like. So you don't have to look. You have to look to start with, but eventually develop it so you can just move there and you know you're there and you didn't look. So it's third finger on the C. And it's a dotted rhythm again, believe it or not, but this time it's a dotted half note. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So the C sharp comes on 4. Thumb on the D, and now second finger on the C, and we're back in G position. Isn't that cool how that works? Then going on the third measure, the second line, you're here. And the last chord, we're back to this awkward thing where you got one note going into 2 notes. It's weird. Try and connect them. Try and get the notes down at the same time. Now what I do is that when I play, I shift my weight. I don't just keep the wrist still and use the fingers. Occasionally, but very seldom would I do that. Usually I'm shifting weight. I'm transferring weight to one finger to another. So on that last measure, my weight's on the index finger. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shift the weight this way. To practice this, I can leave out the B and just play the G. So I'm going to shift the weight from the C to the G. Then I'm going to try shifting the weight from the C to the B. And I'm exaggerating this roll for you, but really the movement is actually very little. You can hardly tell it's there because it's just... Now I want to shift the weight to one of... I can think about either note in that chord, I don't care. I'm going to shift the weight to it, but I'm going to play both notes. You'll have to decide for yourself which is more effective for you. Do you want to think about shifting the weight to the little finger and let the middle finger just go along for the ride? Or do you want to shift the weight to the middle finger and let the little finger go along for the ride? It's whichever works best for you. For me, it's the middle finger. I have to think about the middle finger. And after a while, I think you'll find that's not as hard as it was to start with. If you just use fingers, that's hard. It's doable, but it's hard. That's fine. Now this first and second ending thing on the second line, you see the first 2 measures, there's a 1 with a line that identifies it as first ending. The line identifies it as an ending. The 1 identifies it as first ending. Then in the last 2 measures of the second line, there's a 2 and a line. Identifies it as second ending. And you can have more endings than this. It can get really interesting. But what we do is you see the repeat sign at the end of the first ending. There, after the second measure there. Well, that means you're going to repeat it back to the beginning. And now you play the first line again. Then when you go to the second line, remember you don't play the first ending again. You've already played it. You played it once, it's done. Forget it. Now we go to the second ending and play it, and that's how that works. It can get confusing because sometimes in some pieces there's no repeat sign after the first ending, and then we have to talk about that. What? So we'll get there. Dynamic wise, they only give you one dynamic, and that's an MF. At the beginning of this, they don't give you anything else. But you can change that slightly as you feel the music. Now, when you're first learning a piece of music, you don't feel the music. You're concentrating on the notes and the rhythms and the fingering and all the other junk. But after you get to know it, and you don't have to think about that stuff so much, it's kind of automatic, then you start thinking about the flow of the melody and the music and the feel. And that's the exciting part. You know, it's unfortunate so many beginner students never get to that. It's always just the notes. It's just, let's see, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and they're just thinking about notes. Hardly listening to the music at all. But once you've learned it, then you start thinking about the flow of the music. And make it emotional. Turn it into something. That's the exciting part of music. Seriously, it is. Yes. So the MF, you can change that, alter it. It applies to the melody, which is in the right hand. So the left hand has to stay soft. If I play it both hands the same, so remember, try and learn to play one hand louder than the other. It's going to get trickier than this eventually, so work on it now. And that's about it. Let's try this out slowly. Now when we do the play with me, I'm just going to play the notes and the rhythms because I want you to hear the notes. And that's what it's after. It's up to you to speed it up on your own and to turn it into something musical. So I'm going to give us 4 counts since it's in common time. So go ahead and put your hands in G position. Gotta remember that G. 1, 2, ready, go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 2, 3. Repeat. 2, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Second ending. 2, 3.